All right, let's see. All right, perfect. Let's do this. Oh yeah, that's good. And then, oh, I know. Yeah, all right, that's perfect. See, I want this video to be about as ugly as this game is. Hey there everyone, I am Jeff, your tabletop technician here in the Dice Tower, and as you might be curious to know, today I'm taking a look at Potion Slingers. This is a small deck building game designed by Anthony Fasano, which raised over $14,000 on Kickstarter in 2021. You know, throughout the rulebook and even the Kickstarter page, the real theme of this game is only vaguely explored. But after getting to know its mechanisms and simple gameplay, I kind of came to my own independent conclusion that this game was inspired by an outdoor water fight amongst some possibly socially awkward friends. But instead of trucking water balloons or spraying each other with squirt guns or hoses, you're hurling potions at each other, pouring them into glass vessels, or maybe loading them into squirt guns or hoses. The gameplay is pretty simple. Players start with 5 of the same cards, 2 potions, 1 vessel, and 1 artifact occupying the 4 slots of their holster or play area, and 1 ring waiting face up in their deck. They also start with 3 or 4 essence cubes, depending on player count, in their supply on this health track, before placing one of those cubes at the top of the health vial. At the start of a player's turn, they must draw cards from their deck until they have at least 1 card in each of the 4 rows in their holster. They also get 6 pips, which they track on this 10-sided die. Now, after these 2 steps, a player can take these 7 following actions in any order and as many times as they choose. They can buy a card from the market, which is organized into 2 rows, 1 for potion cards and 1 for everything else. Players pay the buy cost in pips before adding the card face up on top of their deck. Cards are immediately replaced from the appropriate deck in the market. Players can also sell a card from their holster, adding its sell value to their stash of pips before putting the card into a collective trash pile near the market. Now, players can buy and sell as many times on their turn as they would like, but any unused pips are lost at the end of their turn. Now, let's talk about these potions. Potions can be used in 3 ways. You can throw a potion at a player to deal the damage indicated on the card and, if applicable, trigger the effect at the bottom. Alternatively, 2 or more potions can be loaded into a vessel which can then be thrown. Vessels will often combine the damage and effects of the potions you've loaded and may trigger other abilities based on the properties of those potions. Lastly, you can load a potion into any artifact before using it on any player. Artifacts have their own damage and possibly special effects, meaning the potion essentially becomes nothing more than ammo to activate the abilities of the artifact. These potions, however used, will often damage the health of your opponents, but they could have healing effects or give you additional ways to get cards from the market or the trash pile. Now, throwing a potion at an opponent or launching it from one of your artifacts will then force you to trash that potion card. The artifacts never actually get consumed. Throwing a vessel will also cause you to trash the vessel, but the potions that you had loaded into it get saved by adding them to the bottom of your draw deck. You can also trash any card left in your holster or drop it, which lets you save it for later use by, again, placing it underneath your deck. There is no discard pile in Potion Slingers. All cards consumed will either go to the trash pile or get saved underneath your deck. Now, there's one extra action that players can take, and it involves these character cards. These cards give each player a unique ability to start with, but satisfying the flip condition on the bottom of the card will let you unlock more powerful or even new unique abilities for the rest of the game. Some can be flipped back and forth, though the flip condition must always be resatisfied where applicable. Alright, so gameplay-wise, this is a bit like Star Realms meets a water balloon fight, and as I was reading through the rules, I started to think, thanks Tom, another random chaos take that card game for me to hate long enough to make a review here in the channel. But if I'm being honest, I didn't really hate playing this game at all. There are a lot of varying strategies to explore within these different decks of cards. There are abilities to be offensive, to be defensive, and all of it takes a bit of clever card play to pull off. The first thing you'll learn probably somewhat quickly is that you can leave a few cards in your holster to help you set up for the next big attack, or maybe provide a little bit of shielding between your turns. But then you'll only get to draw a couple of cards from your deck into your holster, which means the last few cards you bought from the market had better be the right ones. It's also pretty easy to bury cards in this deck, especially if you're trying to work a couple of parallel strategies. But if you're buying cards quicker than you consume them, you can quickly find yourself thinking, where the heck did that crazy ring go? The way that health works in this game is also a bit unique, and I'm not entirely sure that it's solid. Basically, you manage your health 10 hit points at a time. Whenever your cube on the health vial would reach 0, it stays there until the end of the current turn, before then being removed and a new cube comes out at the 10 hit point space. This means that a player can't smack you for 20 damage on a single turn, and that is kind of nice. I can certainly remember rounds of Star Realms where I got completely decimated on a single turn because of some lucky card draw by my opponent. And while that is kind of fun to do to your opponent, it's not exactly a lot of fun on the other side of the table. However, the opposite is also true in this game. You cannot exceed 10 hit points on this vial, and there's no mechanism in the rules that lets cubes go back into your supply and a new one to come in at the bottom of this track. That means that some characters who are built for healing can be shut down by making sure that they're never actually able to heal themselves on their turn. I feel compelled to explain this just a little bit more, so hear me out. In our first play of this, I was Saltimboca, and I'm not really sure if I'm saying that right, so I'm just going to call her Salty, which is kind of apt, and I'll explain why. At the beginning of the game, she gets a $1 discount on everything in the market. But later on, she loses that ability and suddenly gains the ability to turn everything in her holster into a throwable weapon, with damage equivalent to that item's purchase cost. And I just found myself thinking about that kid who's out playing in the street with the other neighborhood kids. Maybe he's getting picked on, or he takes a couple too many water balloons to the face, and he just loses his mind and starts chucking his toys at all the other kids. And I mean, we've all been there, right? Right? Meanwhile, my wife played as the twins. They have the ability to regain health anytime they throw potions, or eventually even vessels, at another player. At first, I thought the twins would be a bit of a challenge to go up against, because not only would I have to keep dealing damage every turn, but I'd have to deal extra damage to compensate for that healing ability. But then I realized that all I really had to do was make sure she started every one of her turns with a fresh cube at the 10 hit point spot, which meant I just had to deal 10 or more damage on every single one of my turns, which became pretty easy to do when I could simply wing that spigot at her head that I had bought at a discount a few rounds ago. And the thing is, given the complexity of managing the cards in your deck and your narrow range of options here in your holster, means that the safety net represented by this health vial isn't really all that necessary. Now, I haven't played as all the characters in this game, and honestly, I likely won't, but it's easy to tell by reading some of their abilities and their special items that some of them are just more suited for combat than others. And I think that the guy who lets you get an extra $1 for everything you sell out of your holster is just not going to measure up to the girl who can throw a ring at your head for 7 damage. Now, why won't I likely play as all the characters in this game? Well, for the simple fact that I absolutely hate the art style of this game. Besides alluding to it at the start of this video, I've been intentionally silent on the look of this game, but to me, it looks absolutely terrible. Now, believe me, as a classically trained musician, I fully understand that art is entirely subjective. I can't stand country music, but I know that that opinion is not universal, and I can prove it. Hey Joey, what do you think about how this game looks?
The artwork's very whimsical. I like that. I like the look of it.
That's great. But listen, I'm an adult. I play with other adults. Some of us have children running around, and none of us appreciate the art or the twisted theming on some of these cards. I mean, I handed my wife the twins card, and she almost immediately recoiled in discomfort. This is just awkward cartoonery for the sake of awkward cartoonery. And even if I could get past that, there's still the terrible font choice used in this game. I'm proud to say that at 44 years of age, I still have 20/20 vision, and on a well-lit table with the cards perpendicular to my field of vision just 3 or so feet away, I still could not read them. And the rulebook? Here's the character descriptions on page 5 next to a tile from the notoriously hard to read game of Origins First Builders. Okay, so you say, Jeff, hey, fine, this game isn't for you. Just go and play Star Realms. But that's not really entirely true. I really enjoyed the theme and the art of the game of Fort, a game about kids playing in their backyards. And if this game explored that theme and looked a little bit more like that game, I'd be all over this. In fact, I appreciate the card play a little bit more in Potion Slingers than I did in Fort. I don't need to have an adult theme or Ian O'Toole art to appreciate a game, but this is just uncomfortable, it's impossible to read, and that's why I give Potion Slingers a solid 4. And I know I don't usually share my scores in my videos, but look, I would never pick this game up off the shelf. I would never have given this thing a second look. The only reason I've ever played this is because it was a review copy provided by the Dice Tower. And that's kind of a shame because the game behind this creepy candy coating is actually kind of good. A couple of tweaks to the characters, maybe fix the health vial a little bit, and I would gladly put this in front of my friends. Potion Slingers is ugly at first sight and never gets any easier on the eyes, and that is a recipe for disaster. Cheers. All right, let's see. That's your cue.
Sorry.